Look, I want you to think about that one specific closet in your house. Or maybe it's a corner of your garage. Or like that bottom cabinet in your kitchen. You know exactly which one I'm talking about. It's the place where you keep the someday stuff. The $400 cold pressed juicer you bought because you were definitely 100% going to become a healthy morning smoothie person. The acoustic guitar you bought 3 years ago. The expensive camping gear. The stack of hardcover books you swore you were going to read every night instead of scrolling on your phone. In bed. And I want you to be really honest with yourself about how it feels when you accidentally open that door and look at that pile of stuff. It doesn't feel good, right? It actually feels like guilt. Like this tiny, heavy wave of shame. Because every time you look at that juicer, it is literally sitting there, silently judging you for ordering takeout again. I'm Leo, and man, I am so unbelievably guilty of this. For a huge chunk of my 20s, my apartment was basically just a very expensive museum dedicated to fantasy versions of myself. The Leo who hikes on weekends. The Leo who hosts fancy dinner parties. But here is the brutal financial reality that we completely ignore. When we buy all this heavy, expensive gear for our fantasy selves, we aren't just wasting a few $100. We are actively draining the financial security of our actual present-day selves. We are literally trading our real-life freedom, our emergency funds, our investments, our peace of mind, just to fund the lifestyle of a fictional character that doesn't even exist. Today, we are not doing a video about organizing your closet. I really don't care if your house is messy. We need to talk about the psychological trap of trying to buy a new identity and how shedding this specific type of emotional weight is the absolute fastest cheat code to building real wealth. Give me a few minutes because we need to shut down the museum. Let's get into it. So, I really want you to think about why you actually bought that heavy, expensive thing that's currently collecting dust in your house. Let's use the fancy espresso machine as an example, or the $1,200 photography camera. You didn't buy the camera just because you wanted to take pictures. If you're being totally honest with yourself, you bought it because it was a random Wednesday night, you were completely burned out from answering emails for a boss you don't even like, and you were scrolling through Instagram. You saw some guy hiking through a misty forest in the Pacific Northwest, looking incredibly peaceful, snapping photos of pine trees. And in that moment, your brain didn't say, I want a camera. Your brain said, I want to be that guy. I want his peace. I want his life. So you drop $1,200 on the camera body and the lenses, because society has trained us to believe that if you buy the props, the lifestyle will magically just follow. You think you can literally buy a new identity with a credit card, but then the camera arrives, and you take it out of the box, and you realize you're still you. You still have to wake up at 7 a.m. for your commute. You still live in the suburbs. You don't live in a misty forest. And learning aperture and shutter speed is actually really hard and takes hundreds of hours of practice. So the camera goes on a shelf, and this is where the trap actually snaps shut on you. This is the part that keeps you broke and exhausted, because when that camera sits on the shelf, it doesn't just sit there quietly. It becomes a monument to your failure. Every single time you walk through your living room and look at it, it whispers to you. It says, hey, remember when you promised you were going to be a creative, outdoorsy person? Yeah, you're lazy. You just watched 4 hours of Netflix instead. I call this the guilt tax. And man, I want you to look around your house right now and count how many items are currently charging you a guilt tax. The running shoes you wore twice. The language learning software you bought on New Year's Eve. The expensive meal prep containers, still wrapped in plastic. You are surrounding yourself with physical objects that actively make you feel bad about yourself. And here is the craziest part. You refuse to sell them. You know you should. You know you could put the camera on Facebook Marketplace tomorrow and get $800 back. But you don't do it. Why? Because the moment you box up that camera and hand it to a stranger, you have to admit defeat. You have to look in the mirror and say, I am never going to be the misty forest photography guy. That version of me is dead. And that hurts. Letting go of a fantasy identity is incredibly painful. So, to avoid that tiny moment of emotional pain, you just let a $1,200 asset slowly depreciate into worthless plastic on your shelf. You choose to stay financially broke just to protect a fantasy. I really need you to pause and think about the financial devastation of this habit. I want you to mentally add up the cost of the Museum of Fantasy Selves currently sitting in your house. The abandoned hobbies. The aspirational clothes. You know, the jeans you bought 3 sizes too small because you were definitely going to lose the weight this summer. The camping gear. For the average person watching this, there is probably $3,000 to $5,000 of dead capital just sitting in their closets. Now, I want you to look at your actual life, your present-day, real-world reality. How much anxiety are you carrying right now because of money? Do you have a credit card balance that keeps you up at night? Are you terrified of your car breaking down because you don't have an emergency fund? Are you staying in a toxic job because you literally cannot afford to miss a single paycheck? Think about how insane this is. You are actively robbing your real self, the real you who is stressed, tired, and desperate for financial breathing room, just to fund the lifestyle of a fictional character that doesn't even exist. You are letting the real you drown, just so the fantasy you can have a really nice kayak in the garage. It makes absolutely no sense, but we all do it because nobody talks about the psychology behind our spending. We just get told to budget better. But a spreadsheet isn't going to fix an identity crisis. So how do we actually stop this? How do we break the cycle and start keeping our money? You have to fundamentally change the way you interact with your own desires. I want to give you 2 rules that you can start using literally today. And if you actually apply these, I promise you, your bank account is going to look completely different in 6 months. Rule number 1, you have to force your fantasy self to earn a budget. The next time you get that sudden, intense urge to become a completely new person, let's say you watch a documentary and suddenly decide you are going to become a cyclist. You go online and you're looking at a $2,000 Trek bike and the spandex and the helmet. Stop. You are not allowed to buy the gear. If you truly want to be a cyclist, you have to go rent a bike. Go to a local shop, spend $40 and rent one for the weekend. And you have to actually wake up at 6 a.m. on a Saturday and ride it for 15 miles. If you do that and you absolutely love it, great. Rent it again next weekend. I have a personal rule. I have to rent the equipment for a new hobby at least 4 times before I am legally allowed to buy anything. Do you know what usually happens? By the second weekend, you realize that waking up at 6 a.m. on your only day off actually sucks. You realize your legs hurt, and the traffic is scary, and you'd rather just drink coffee on your porch. The fantasy evaporates. And guess what? You just saved yourself $2,000. You bought the lesson for $40 instead of $2,000. You have to separate the desire to buy the gear from the actual willingness to do the work. Force the habit to exist before you fund it. Rule number 2. You need to perform an honesty audit and fire your ghosts. This weekend, I want you to walk into that closet or that garage. I want you to look at the gear, the clothes, the gadgets. I want you to pick up the item and ask yourself, have I used this in the last 90 days? And realistically, am I going to use it in the next 90 days? If the answer is no, you have to fire that version of yourself. You have to look at the juicer and say, I am not a 6 a.m. green juice person. I am an iced coffee person, and that is completely fine. Take a picture of it, put it on eBay, put it on Facebook Marketplace. Sell it for 50 cents on the dollar if you have to. I know it feels like losing money, but you already lost the money the day you bought it. Right now, you aren't losing money. You are extracting the remaining value out of a dead asset. You are trading a useless piece of plastic for actual liquid cash that can buy your freedom. And more importantly, you are extracting the guilt tax out of your house. I cannot even begin to describe the emotional relief of doing this. Imagine walking through your apartment and every single thing you see actually reflects who you are right now. Not who you wish you were 5 years ago. Not who Instagram told you to be. Just you. Imagine opening a closet and seeing empty space. Imagine taking the $1,500 you got from selling all your abandoned hobbies and dropping it as a lump sum payment on your credit card. Imagine the feeling of logging into your banking app and seeing that balance drop to zero. That peace of mind, that ability to breathe, that is infinitely more valuable than having a garage full of aspirational junk. We spend so much time running away from who we actually are. We spend so much of our paycheck trying to build a perfectly curated museum for people to look at. But the only person who has to live in the museum is you. And living in a museum is exhausting. Real wealth isn't about having the money to buy every single version of yourself. Real wealth is having the absolute quiet confidence to just be exactly who you are and keeping your money in the bank where it can actually protect you. When you stop trying to buy an identity, that's when you finally start building an empire. Look, I know taking a moving box or a trash bag into that specific closet this weekend, it sounds exhausting. And honestly, it kind of is. Because you aren't just cleaning out your house. You are basically grieving like 4 or 5 different versions of yourself that just didn't pan out. And that is a really hard pill to swallow. But I promise you, the absolute worst part is just opening the door. Once you actually start putting those items into a box and you realize that they don't have power over you anymore, the relief is insane. You literally feel lighter. You realize you are selling your guilt to fund your actual, real life freedom. And you get to just be you without the props. I really want to know that I am not the only one who fell into this trap. Head down to the comments right now and just confess. What is the most expensive, ridiculous thing you bought for a fantasy you that is currently sitting in a box, quietly judging you? Was it a surfboard when you live 4 hours from the beach? Was it a DJ controller? Because, yeah. I definitely bought a $600 Pioneer DJ setup a few years ago, thinking I was going to be playing clubs on the weekends. I think I used it twice before it went under my bed. Let's just air it all out down there. No judgment at all. I hang out in the comments and read almost all of them. If this hit home for you today, or if it just made you feel a little less crazy about the stuff sitting in your house, hit that like button. It really helps push back against the algorithm that just wants us to keep buying more identities. And hit subscribe if you want to keep untangling all this financial and mental baggage together. I'm Leo. Be kind to your actual self today. Shut down the museum, and I'll catch you guys in the next one.